everyone. Welcome to the French Flick, the guide for indoor hockey. I'm your host, Erin Tallman, also chief leader for Marseille's women's team here in France. In this episode of the French Flick, we're going to focus on offense by analyzing the women's final of the Indoor Hockey World Cup 2018. We can better understand how each player should position herself in order to create a fast-paced game with a nice flow. It's the Netherlands versus Germany, two of the greatest teams in hockey. As we discuss offensive strategies, take note of the numerous mistakes and fouls made by both teams. It's important to remember that even at high levels of hockey playing, every player makes mistakes and bad decisions. It's only one reason why we should never focus our attention on our mistakes or the mistakes of our teammates. We're here to do our best and never give up. We trust one another through the messiness as well as through our shining moments. Let's talk about the main offensive strategies being implemented by each team. You'll notice both teams alternating between these different strategies, most specifically depending on how the opposing team is pressuring the ball carrier. Both teams utilize frequent, fast-paced passing in the back to get the opposing attackers to move, thus generating clear spaces to pass the ball up the pitch. This is done via the two backs and/or the two backs in connection with the midfielder. There is also a two-back midfielder and frontliner combo, and we will call this the rectangle. Two notable methods are being used to achieve fast-paced passing in a triangle setting with two backfielders and one midfielder. First, the midfielder acts as the top point of the isosceles triangle. The point, so to speak, can change the form of the triangle slightly, but generally remains in the center of the pitch. While the midfielder remains mostly central, it can be beneficial at times to cover the line if there is an open space. This does not mean an attacker must automatically come low on the pitch. We're going to see this in a different scenario. The second triangle option is when the back left drops into a deep-seated position, acting as a solo backfielder, and the right back heads up on the line as the midfielder pulls to the left side of the pitch to cover the line there. The triangle in this case is upside down compared to the first option. The first option is best when receiving mid to high pressure from the opposing team. It allows multiple fast-paced passes between the three members of the triangle until the moment when an opportunity to send the ball up the field arises. The second is best when low to no pressure is being applied from the attacking team. This is helpful if you need a different angle on which to send the ball up the board or up the field. If the left back decides to move into this low-seated position, the other two members of the triangle must follow suit. The rectangle situation is when one attacker drops down the pitch to cover the line on her side, while the midfielder is covering the line on the other side. This is a 2-2 situation, like a rectangle. The attacker on the side of the midfielder must remain high on the pitch, either on the line or around the top of the circle. The attacker who remains high must try to stay on the side of the pitch where there is the ball. If the ball moves to the left side, she should move to the left side, or she can maintain a central position near the top of the circle. However, if the midfielder reclaims the center of the pitch to recreate the triangle, the low-seated attacker must return high on the pitch. The rectangle is a good idea when the opposing team is adding a lot of pressure to the backs. This helps the back players with extra passing options, but it also allows us to quickly step into a defense with 4 players near our zone if the ball gets overturned. It's also a good idea when there are empty spaces that can provide perfect passing opportunities that will help us carry or send the ball up the pitch. Keep in mind that we should not be static, and once we make a pass, we should be on the move. It can be a situation where you need to drop back so the player to whom you sent the ball has the chance to send it back to you again without creating an easily intercepted pass. This is most often the case on the back line. It can also mean you need to move forward or to the left or to the right. It can be a matter of a few steps or a longer distance if necessary. Either way, we must always consider the needs of the ball carrier. If you send the ball to a teammate and do not adjust your placement on the pitch, you're putting the ball carrier in a dangerous position. Remember, we mentioned earlier that teams are frequently alternating between the various offensive strategies. This is what we need to achieve in order to prevent the opposing team from knowing exactly what we will do every step of the way throughout the game. Lastly, we never want our two attackers on the same line as our midfielder. We must always try to know where our players are at all times so we can make the necessary adjustments. All right, we're closing our analysis of offensive strategies to make room for a brief discussion about the goalie's must-knows. As the goalie, your main objective throughout the game is to follow the ball left and right, closing the gap from the ball to the cage. Generally, you'll want to stay centralized, meaning you close the gap from the ball to the center of the cage when the ball is being played on the opponent's half of the pitch. Once they're on our side, you'll adjust accordingly, following the ball to close the gap. You might also find yourself marking an attacker who decides to plant herself in our circle. However, do not continue marking her if she moves to the sidelines. You need to stay focused on the ball to cage gap. When the opponents penetrate our circle, you can use your whole body to block the ball. This includes feet, legs, arms, chest, head, and stick. Using your hands, always play air balls downward when possible, and only send high balls straight up with your glove positioned in a way that it sends the ball up and back behind the cage. Don't swing your stick at other sticks when making a floor tackle. Use your stick when necessary on the ground to block a ball as a field player would. You can also use your stick to stop air balls, but you cannot swing the stick in the air. You should expect shots at goal at any moment once an attacker has entered the circle. Keep in mind that when an opponent enters our circle on the line and in the corner of the pitch, you're responsible for covering the back line. It means you must close the gap that runs along the back line to the cage. You can often place the entire side of your body against the post, ensuring that your arm and leg are both pressed against it and removing the open space which would allow a goal. If you're comfortable with the idea, you can also move forward to play as a field player would to block an attacker in a 2-1-3-1 situation. However, you must be ready to quickly return to the cage once the attacker sends the ball back to a teammate. And if you do leave the circle at any time to play the ball, you must act as a field player and you can no longer use your body to stop the ball, only your stick. Let's discuss penalty corners. If the ball is sent to the top right or top left of the circle, meaning the side, you should step out closer to the receiver but ensure your legs are closed at the moment a shot at goal is made. You also need to ensure the space between the side of your body and the side of the cage is closed to the ball carrier, who is going to be shooting at goal. If the ball is sent to the top of the circle, you should step forward a few steps, perhaps between the stroke line and the cage. This will allow your first runner to make contact with the ball receiver, but you will also be blocking the central part of the cage. Thanks for joining me on the French Flick, the guide to indoor hockey. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, let me know.